Hey, good to see you. Internet snafus there for a minute. We're recording. Good to see you. We're going to continue again today.
Who is it?
We're going to do a little bit of motivation. First of all, Mary Ellen, would you like to put up the initial prayer or prayers? I think everyone knows them by heart.
Working on it, just a sec.
Okay, so I'll start. Many of you know Sangye Churang Soki Chognam La Changchu Batu Dagni Kyapsu Chi Dagi Chunyen Gipe Sognam Ki Drola Panjir Sangye Trupa Sho. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. Due to the collections I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit migrating beings or wandering beings. Sangye Chodang Soki Chognam La Jangchu Padu Dagni Kapsu Chi Dagi Chunen Gipe Sognam Ki Drola Penjir Sangye Drupa Sho. So this should be our motivation, very strong at the beginning. First, taking refuge, Mahayana refuge, which presupposes not just the desire to seek protection from the suffering for ourself, but taking cognizance of all other mother sentient beings, that we're taking refuge to be able to protect them, and then generating the thought of bodhicitta to become a Buddha for their sake. In a mandala, by offering this ground anointed with perfume and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and moon, visualized as a Buddha realm, may all wandering beings enjoy such a pure realm. O holy and perfect pure Lama, from the clouds of compassion that form in the skies of your Dharmakaya wisdom, please release a rain of vast and profound Dharma, precisely in accordance with the needs of those to be trained. So I often think in this regard, when Lama Zopa Rinpoche would give teachings, he would sometimes mention that he felt when he was teaching, it was actually Lama Yeshe who was teaching out of his, sort of like our lamas, our gurus, the Dalai Lamas and my own gurus. When we say, O holy and perfect Lama, from the clouds of compassion that form in the skies of your Dharmakaya wisdom, please release a rain of vast and profound Dharma in accordance with the needs of those to be trained. It's as though we're praying to our gurus to imbue my own mind stream with that rain of vast and profound Dharma that I'll unconsciously provide to you precisely in accordance with your needs. Idam Guru Radna Mandalakam Niryatayami. Okay, thank you. So we're going to begin with a little meditation. Besides the words, try to set motivation in meditation. So first of all, calming your mind with a meditation on the respiration and the breathing. We should say mindfulness of the inhalation and exhalation. If you're really watching, knowing when you're inhaling, when you're exhaling, knowing if it's a short or long breath, you'll begin to recognize when the mind is beginning to multitask, so to speak, thinking about other things. So let go of those other thoughts and invest that mental energy into the mindfulness of the breathing. Then, without missing a beat, so to speak, simply switch your attention away from the mindfulness of the respiration to the mental consciousness, the conventional mental consciousness that you can begin to recognize through its contents, because the actual consciousness is so subtle. Memories, plans, observations about the present, preoccupations, observation of suffering in your body, maybe pain. All of this contents and many things that just arise spontaneously due to karma, due to the previous continuity of thoughts you were having. All of this content are like clouds in the otherwise clear nature of your mind, the conventional clear light nature of your mind. Getting a glimpse of that calmness and clarity between the thoughts. See if you can focus on that clear light nature. In one sense, it's clear because there are no other conceptualizing thoughts. The main purpose here is that it's clear in the sense of not being obstructive to the entry or reabsorption of contents of your mental consciousness. It forms no viscosity, so to speak, like, if a fly were to try to walk through a puddle of honey, it would be stuck and wouldn't be able to move because the honey provides resistance to the movement of the fly. But our consciousness is not like that. It offers no resistance to the arisal of thoughts, their duration, or their reabsorption back into the mental consciousness. This feature that we have that all living beings have, but rarely is recognized, is what's called our developmental Buddha nature. The fact that the mind offers no resistance, that it is not stained by thoughts, allows us to develop good qualities and dismiss, to get rid of, eradicate negative states of mind. We have everything we need right now. And to recognize that right now is a result of this auspicious moment of having a life of leisure and endowment that we put much effort to create the karmic causes of in previous lives. We're reaping the benefits of that right now. Not just the life in the upper realms, not just the life as a human, but having met the Dharma when conditions are available for the continuity of those teachings. There are beings that have realized the teachings. There are patrons and fellow followers of the path, other members of our Bodhisattva Sangha, the ordained Sangha, even the Tantric Sangha, that can help us on that path. There are benefactors, like the center itself and its benefactors. This life has the potential to be used in the very mundane ways that most people do, striving to follow the 8 worldly dharmas, to accumulate wealth, to have pleasure, to be famous, to be loved, and so forth, and to be free of the opposites of that. But religious practitioners aim higher. From a Buddhist perspective, we could take the aim of achieving liberation, nirvana for ourself. But the Buddha spoke to those of higher intellect, not to be satisfied to follow his lesser teachings, his lesser vehicle, his Hinayana, but to practice his great vehicle, Mahayana, that takes in perspective all living beings who've been our mothers numberless times in the past, who are and have been stuck in cyclic existence in samsara since beginningless time, and are presently, many of them, without any refuge protector. Many of them, all of them, we have some karmic connection with because they've all been our mothers, but some of them in particular won't be liberated from cyclic existence, won't achieve enlightenment until we ourselves manifest as a Buddha and provide certain teachings along the way, or the ultimate teachings to lead them there. Think, in order to achieve the state of a Buddha, to be able to protect and help sentient beings like that, I have to collect the 2 accumulations of merit and wisdom, which I'm probably just beginning to understand. They are explained in detail in Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary, Illumination of the Intention, Illumination of the Intent, the topic of our class. So think, I'm going to participate today in order to accumulate the causes of achieving enlightenment, to practice the Bodhisattva deeds, to bring about the welfare of all sentient beings. I'm going to listen to the teachings, contemplate and meditate in order to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. Oh, okay. Good to see you. A couple more people showed up. KT is here. Amy, Louise, Rocio, and Mintu are off camera. Shanka's having some migraine problems. I suggested he might listen with a like darkened mask on, but it doesn't look like he's here yet. Maybe he'll show up. Okay, so how are we doing? Any observations about the meditation that we do each week? You've been doing it, and you've always had some lingering doubt or concern. Jennifer, anything? No, you're okay. Karen? No, okay. Okay, no problems. Okay, that's good to know. So, we are going to begin in our text, and it's in Anne Klein's text. It's page 180, and in Jimpa's text, who knows the number? I didn't write it down on my, for anyone with a written text.
186.
186 in Jimpa. Okay, and 180 in Anne Klein. Okay, good. Close to one another. So this is what we mentioned last time, or I think I might have read, and I'm going to go back after this, after reading this, and go back just to get us up to speed again. The text reads in Jimpa's translation, therefore, as described here, for something to be the focal object, or we say the referent. In fact, the word object doesn't appear in the Tibetan there, it's just mikpa. In order for something to be the focal object of the innate identity view, the innate view of the transitory collection, in other words, it must spontaneously give rise to the thought, I am, or I. I thought it was kind of interesting here when it says both Anne Klein and Jimpa translated that as Jimpa translated it spontaneously. Anne Klein translates it as something that naturally generates the awareness thinking I. The Tibetan word or Tibetan phrase is nangi. Chikta lenkegi mikpala ngao nyambe lo nangi kewa gope, since it's necessary to generate spontaneously or naturally. I would like to say another meaning of nangi is easily. The reason for this is, here it says, as Jimpa is saying, therefore it's described here for something to be the focal object of the innate identity view, it must spontaneously or naturally or easily give rise to the thought I. So what does that mean? Let me ask a question. Nadine, are you familiar with the practice of exchanging self and others?
At Tonglen, yes, I try to practice.
Okay, Tonglen's not.
Lojong?
Tonglen is not exchanging self and others. It's a practice related to that. Is anyone practice in particular exchanging self and others? Usually it comes in the phrase equalizing and exchanging self and others. No one knows what I'm talking about. Nadine.
The seven steps for developing bodhicitta, and it's one of them. No, 11.
in more elaborate, yeah, right. So that's
11 steps.
melding, putting together of the two traditions of Maitreya and Manjushri. Usually we talk about the 7 steps of cause and effect, right? Recognizing all sentient beings have been your mother, remembering their kindness and so forth. And then there's another method that came down from Manjushri through Shantideva and others. Maybe it was someone before Shantideva, maybe Chandraguna, I can't remember. That is equalizing and exchanging self and other with others, and is exemplified in the Bodhisattvacharya Vatara chapter on concentration. There, the main thing you're concentrating on is equalizing and exchanging self and others, even though you think it should be concentrating on emptiness or other things. What it means is to put yourself in another person's position, and look at yourself as another and think, what is this guy George? He's walking by me, not putting any money in my begging cup. I need a coffee. I need breakfast. He's got everything he needs. He's got good clothes, and so forth. And to put yourself in that position. Does that sound right now? You're more familiar with that now? Still not resonating with some of you. Ida, have you heard of that before? Exchanging self and others? Okay. So
yes, Venerable, I have.
Okay. So a very important process. The reason I'm asking is this. If you are practicing equalizing and exchanging self and others, what point of the path are you on, Paul? Are you in the path of seeing, path of accumulation, before the path of accumulation?
If you're engaged in exchanging self and I would think you're on the path of accumulation.
Well, in the path of accumulation, you already generated bodhicitta, right?
Oh, right. So you're just not even on the right.
So you could be practicing it there too, but you could be practicing this before the path of accumulation,
Sure.
Before you've realized emptiness. So if you are equalizing yourself and exchanging yourself with others, at that point, with that mindset, the view of the transitory collection to you, when you're thinking, you're thinking you are that beggar, or you are that angry person, or you are just a suffering person outside. At that point, you still, because you haven't realized emptiness yet, you still have a very strong view of the transitory collection. Is that an actual view of the transitory collection? Or is that a view of that's grasping to the self of phenomena? Or the self of persons other than yourself? Do you see what I'm saying? Someone's nodding. Some people are not. Karen's kind of dubious. Okay.
I definitely am confused. I thought that the view of the transitory collection was the attribution of the transitory collection with a self-supporting substantial I.
Right. But here it says that for something to be of the focal object of the innate identity view of the transitory collection, it must spontaneously, naturally, or as I say, easily give rise to the thought as I am. So there's something to investigate. Is that for that person who is equalizing and exchanging self and others, when they're within that mindset, thinking these aggregates of the beggars are mine, is that a view of the transitory collection? Because there's not part of your own, you yourself, actual continuum, conventional continuum. That's the continuum of some other person. You could do that with all people, right? Okay, something to think about. Mary Ellen, what are you thinking?
Aren't those two practices the practices that someone on the middle scope of the Lam Rim is using to open their hearts to enter the door of the Mahayana?
Well, yeah, you're not, to enter the door of the Mahayana is, there's a lot of terminology. We say,
To develop bodhicitta.
yeah, it's someone who is already on the middling path or trained in the middling path in order to actualize entry into the Mahayana. Entry into the Mahayana is when you develop spontaneous bodhicitta, right? We talk about awakening the Mahayana lineage is when you develop great compassion. So anyway, we're talking about these practices are generally talking about someone like that who's a hopeful bodhisattva, proto-bodhisattva, someone who wants to become a bodhisattva, wants to develop bodhicitta, and they're using their energies not just in the sevenfold method of Maitreya to develop bodhicitta, but especially in the method that was transmitted by Manjushri to quickly develop bodhicitta by equalizing and exchanging self and others. So just think about that. We could talk in the discussion group on Monday. Jennifer, what do you think?
Oh, thank you. Just had a quick question of clarification. Would the Tonglen just be exchanging self for others and the equalizing would be the preliminary to that?
Tonglen is not equalizing and exchanging self and others. Tonglen is a particular practice to mount the, it doesn't necessarily have to be mounted on the breath. It's a particular practice to enhance the, having recognized the defects of self-cherishing and out of great compassion, taking on the suffering of sentient beings, putting it on your self-cherishing thought in your mind, and then on the basis of recognizing the benefits of cherishing others, and out of the great love, wanting others to be endowed with happiness, imagining sending out all of your good qualities. So neither of those are necessarily equalizing and exchanging self with others. That is a practice that can be done even without spending the time, like in Shantideva's chapter on concentration in the Bodhisattva Charyavatara. It's related with that. It's a particular practice. And one of the practices of that is to mount the giving and taking on the breathing. Even that is not all Tonglen has to be with the breathing. It can be done just mentally. Imagine taking on the suffering, sending out good qualities and everything like that. So they're all related and worthy of revision. That is, go back and study those things again as you hear more and more about them to see how they're all interrelated. Jennifer, you still have some?
Okay. No, I'm just then wondering if Tonglen is I'm just going back to teachings and resources. I've always thought Tonglen was like maybe a subset of practicing exchanging self and others, or just, I never heard that distinction before, so it's still a little bit confusing to me.
Yeah, say for instance, in the Lama Chopa Puja, in the glance meditation, when we say, Dena Jesun Lama Tukche Chen, oh, holy Guru, please bless me to give all of my happiness to others and take on their suffering and so forth, the verse that we recite 3 times. Some people say that's Tonglen. That's not actually the Tonglen meditation. That's a prelude to it. Then after that verse is talking about the disadvantages of self-cherishing, the advantages of cherishing others, seeing that the basis of cherishing others, as the basis of all good qualities is cherishing others and so forth. All of these are stages in that gradual development. The last verse, when we say, please, grant me blessing to develop fully characterized bodhicitta, in which I mount through the sort of the special practice of mounting, giving and taking upon the respiration. That's the actual meditation on Tonglen. Before that, none of them are actually Tonglen, but there are practices of equalizing and exchanging self and others. Anyway, the point here is for you to think with respect to this, when it says the referent object or the focal object, the referent of the innate identity view, for something to be that, it must spontaneously give rise to the thought of I. So that person who's exchanging self and others, does that, to be the focal object of that, it has to easily, spontaneously, naturally give rise to the thought I or I am. Okay, anyway, I'm not going to go into any more detail about that. So something for you to think about. So that paragraph continues. Thus, although the innate grasping at persons with separate continua, okay, like say, for instance, when you're exchanging self and others, right? That's a different continuum than you. Although the innate grasping at persons with separate continua as existing through their own intrinsic characteristics does constitute grasping at self-existence of persons, it is not the innate identity view.
I get it.
You get it now. Okay, so that's what to think about.
I
Now,
think
Karen, did you get it? Did you have a grok moment? Not yet. No. Okay.
Say
Yeah.
that again, Venerable George. Could you read that again?
Yeah, in this is Jimpa's text. Thus, although the innate grasping at persons with separate continua, I mean, continua separate from you, although the innate grasping at persons with separate continua as existing through their own intrinsic characteristic, as though existing inherently, does constitute grasping at the self-existence of persons, it is not the innate identity view. It is not the innate view of the transitory collection. So that's what I was asking you to investigate. So think about that. Oh, good. I think Paul's thinking, I think that's got to be deep thought mudra there. Okay. So let's continue. So the phrase, I'm reading Jimpa again. The phrase operating by way of I and mine does not indicate that mere I and mere mine are the held objects of apprehension of this innate identity view. Oh, again, sometimes difficult to understand. In Anne's translation of that on page 180, she has in brackets, in the citation just above from Chandrakirti. So that's the context. When Jimpa is saying the phrase operating by way of I and mine is talking about the commentary just before that. It says, furthermore, the commentary states, the identity view is an afflicted intelligence that operates by way of I and mine. So here, Jimpa is saying, this is like a paragraph later, the phrase operating by way of I and mine, you can see that verse just before that, operates by way of I and mine, does not indicate that the mere I and the mere mind are the held objects of apprehension. of this, and translates that as this way. In the citation stated just above, engaged in such thoughts of I and mine, that does not indicate that mere I and mere mine are the objects of the subjective aspect of the mode of apprehension. So who of you there commonly talk about the, just when talking to your neighbor over tea and crumpets, talk about the subjective aspect of the mode of apprehension? That's a little bit, what is it talking about? Generally, what it means, the object of the mode of apprehension is a term. What is it? Paul or John in Tibetan?
Zinyul,
Zintangiyul, right?
Zintangil.
Zintangiyul, which is usually synonymous with Zungyul, or apprehended object. So what it's saying here, or she's saying, Anna's saying, they are the mere I and mere mind are not the subjective aspect of the mode of apprehension. The word that the reason the word aspect comes in is because in Chandrakirti's commentary, he doesn't use Zintangiyul, he doesn't use mode of apprehension. He's using mikpa or mikyul. And so Lama Tsongkhapa is trying to put the word in his commentary. So if you're reading Chandrakirti by way of utilizing Lama Tsongkhapa's insight, his commentary, you can see what you can see the point you're talking about. Basically, what it's saying is the mere I and mere mind are not the apprehended objects of the view of the transitory collection. What the view of the view of the transitory collection is apprehending, knowing, or in this case, not knowing correctly, is not the mere I in the mere mind. Rather, in Anne's translation, it indicates that a view of the transitory collection has the aspect of conceiving these two to be established by way of their own character, or to be inherently existent. So the phraseology here, as we've mentioned many times before, sometimes can be confusing. Sounds like it's talking about something new you never heard about before, and can throw you for a loss. But what it means is that the view of the transitory collection is not apprehending the mere I and mere mind. They are its referent object. They are its focal object, right? Remember we said that before, right? The mere I, it's not apprehending them though. What it is doing, what it is apprehending is the inherent existence of the mere I and the mere mind. When I say apprehending, that almost sounds like it's correct. It's grasping to the mere I and the mere mind as being inherently existent. That's why the word subjective comes in there. So that in Anne's translation, she has the word subjective. In Jimpa's, he says, the phrase operating by way of I and mine does not indicate that the mere I and the mere mine are held objects of apprehension. They're not the apprehended object of this innate identity view. What is indicated is that such an innate identity view possesses the aspect of apprehending these two, the I and the mine, as existing through their intrinsic characteristics. It's another way of saying as being inherently existent. Making sense?
Yes, the light bulb went on, I think.
Okay, good. Okay. The electricity's working. Amy just got her coffee and a little cream there, I see. What is that? Is that coffee or tea are you having? Oh, energy drink. Okay, something else.
Tea, green tea.
Oh, green tea. Okay, good. That's even better. Okay, so we're following a little bit. Ida, are you completely confused? Okay, not completely. So furthermore, reading Jimpa, furthermore, it is mine, quote unquote, itself that is the focal object of the innate view grasping at mine, right? Remember we said it's the mere I that is the focal object or the referent of the innate view grasping to I, and it is the mine, you could say the mere mine, that is the focal object of the innate identity view grasping at mine. We should not understand the eyes, the eyeballs, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the taste, the body, and so forth, which are ordinarily thought of as mine. My eye has floaters. My eyes have macular degeneration. My ears are not hearing so well, and so forth. You could be talking about the gross organs. You could be talking about the faculties also. Furthermore, it is mind itself that is the focal object of the innate view of the grasping at mind. We should not understand the eyes and so on to be its focal object. So you're not referring to, if you think my computer got a scratch or something of mine, that's not the focal object of the innate view of the transitory collection grasping at mind, that object. It's the mind itself that's thinking that that is mine. What do you think, Richard? Your symphony.
In Jimpa's text, at least, there seems to be a distinction being made between held objects of apprehension and focal objects. And I was wondering if you could discuss a little bit more what the difference is between a held object and a focal object.
Right. Say, for instance, we just mentioned this, but to say it again in other words, let's say, for instance, if you're trekking in Nepal and you're high up and you're in the snowy region, and you see a snow mountain as blue. Has anyone ever experienced that kind of thing? You know what that's talking about? I just experienced the other day when we had a big snowfall here, and I looked out my window with the sun shining on it into my eyes, and afterwards I could only see an after image of blue. I'm not sure what the actual mechanism is, but there is an example. The referent object of your apprehension of a blue snow mountain, so that mountain climber, that trekker, is seeing the white snow mountain as blue, right? Their referent object is the white snow mountain. Their apprehended object, theoretical apprehended object, because it doesn't really exist, is a blue snow mountain. So in the terms of the here, if you're talking about I and mine, the referent object of the transitory collection, view of the transitory collection, is the mere I and the mere mind. That's its focal object. That's what it's referring to. It's not apprehending that. What it's apprehending is that referent object is existing by way of its own characteristics, inherently, from its own side, truly existing. Does that help?
So you're using apprehended instead of held.
I'm asking Richard. Richard, does that help a little?
Yes, it does. I think that if I understand correctly, what you're saying, apprehended object is actually the held object. of apprehension.
Yeah, when you
And then the focal object is what the transitory collection, the view of the transitory collection apprehends. In other words,
oh no, not
mistakenly
apprehends, not apprehends. That's the held object.
the held
It's
object.
referring to. That is, like, say, for instance, when you're seeing the blue snow mountain, what you think it's a blue snow mountain, what you're actually referring to is a white snow mountain,
Right.
but apprehending it, holding it as blue. Your focal object, your referent object is the white snow mountain,
Right.
but you're holding it, apprehending it as blue.
Mhm.
So those are two different things.
I think I understand. Yeah,
Okay.
I think I do.
Okay, Sean, you were about to make some clarification.
No, I was just saying that you were using apprehended instead of held, because he had asked using held as the
Right. Yeah, you could use this either the whole held object, the apprehended object. Okay, how are we doing? Making a little bit of sense? Paul, what do you think? Okay, okay. Furthermore, it is mind itself that is the focal object of the innate identity view grasping mind. We should not understand the eyes and so forth to be its focal object. As for its apprehending aspect, well, and Klein says, the subjective aspect is, upon observing the object of observation, to conceive the mind to be established by way of its own character. Okay, so that's using these same things again. Upon observing the object of observation, in other words, upon referring to the focal object, that is the mere I or mine, or here in this case, mine, to conceive the mind to be established by way of its own character, or as Jimpa says, as for the apprehending aspect, it grasps at mine as existing through intrinsic characteristics on the basis of taking mine as its focus, as its referent. Okay. Again, so almost sounds like something you never heard before, but it's what we've talked about many times in the course on practice of emptiness and so forth. So when you talk about the I, we've gotten an idea what the mere I and the inherently existent I might be like in our minds. The mere mine is you take as you should not understand the eyes and so on as being its focal object. So you're not focusing or referring to the eyes, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, or those organs. You don't have to. When I say organs, that means the sense base. The eye faculty, the ear faculty, the nose faculty, the tongue faculty, the body faculty. You're not taking those. You're not focusing upon those and conceiving them to be inherently existent. That would be grasping at the inherent existence of phenomena other than persons, right? What you're focusing on instead is your mind's reaction to those things, at thinking them as mine. When you think my eye, or say my blood pressure. Sorry, I was fighting with blood pressure yesterday. Something that you imagine as mine, it's that subjective mind that subjective mind, M-I-N-D, that is apprehending something as mine, M-I-N-E. It's that which you're focusing on, and you're conceiving it, you're holding it, as being inherently existent. Making sense? KT? Oh, that's your photo. I thought that was you sitting there. Okay, you're off cam. Oh no, that is you. Okay. You're just stationary. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yes, I think it's becoming more clear.
Okay.
It's like we have the mere eye, and then the eye that is kind of like the intrinsic eye that maybe is like the thief in the room that we're looking, or where is the reactionary eye
Right.
versus the mere eye, and then we have the mere mind versus the intrinsic mind that we're grasping at. Is that correct? Like
Right.
almost like four categories.
Right. But here there's this extra layer of, let's say, complication, because when we say mine, say my iPad, when you talk about the view of the transitory collection, focus, say, grasping to the inherently existent mine. The mine there is not the iPad, it's your own mental consciousness that's thinking that iPad is mine. That consciousness now is not referring, when you're talking about the grasping at that, you're not talking about that focusing on the iPad. You're talking about your mind focusing on your, I want to say, your self, what I'm trying to say, your kind of mind that wants to think, that's mine, that's mine. It's not focusing on the iPad any longer. That was the basis for generating the thought mind. But once the thought mind arises, you conceive of that thought mind as being inherently existent.
Yeah, thanks.
Stephen.
Thanks, Venerable George. I just wanted to say the way you described the mere mind, sort of as something that we imagine, almost makes me think it doesn't even exist at all.
Oh.
It's like, to me, it's almost a relationship between two phenomena, myself and some other phenomena there. It seems like it's very, very subtle.
Yeah, it is subtle, but it comes in the beginning of the Madhyamaka, and I think it'll be coming up in a second here. When at the beginning, when Chandrakirti is talking about homage to sentient being, or homage to great compassion that views sentient beings, who conceive of an I, and then on the basis of that conceive of mine. And as a result of mine, they develop all of their delusions. So the I itself and the mind, sometimes if it's just the grasping to the I, that can cause certain delusions to arise. But the grasping to the mind is a source of other delusions. It's sort of derived from having conceived of oneself as an inherently existent person that has things that are its possession. They are mine. Okay, you have to think about.
Yeah, the apprehended object is very powerful, but the focal object almost seems like it isn't there at all.
Well, how about the mere I? Is that not there at all?
I wonder too, but it's
so
less
here,
not there
mere
than the
I,
mere mind.
Mere I is a focal object of the view of the transitory collection grasping to I, right? That's its referent. But as soon as that's what it's referring to, but you have to remember the mere I, we never actually perceive. Although we're referring to it, it's like the snow mountain, the trekker doesn't actually perceive the white snow mountain. it's sort of superimposed with a blue shade to it, right? So the mere I, by the fact that it's a conventionally existent phenomena, appearing to a person who's not yet a Buddha in post-meditation, that necessarily appears as inherently existent. See, although the mere I is a referent object, it's appearing to be inherently existent, and it's that which is what you're grasping at. You're going along with the appearance of that mere I as being inherently existent. A lot to unpack, a lot to think about.
Yeah. Is it possible, Venerable George, to have an appearing object without a focal object?
I'm not sure. I don't think so. Generally, let's say the appearing object to conception is a mental image, right? That's its appearing object. If you're talking about the appearing object of perception, generally, say, I'm looking out my window right now. I don't know if you can see reflection in my glasses. I think there are trees outside my window. So that it's its appearing object, and that's what its referent object is. That's what its focal object is. That's what its referent is. It's referring to the tree and it's appearing. So in that case, the appearing object and the referent or referent object are the same. But for conception, the referent object and the appearing object can be different. Right? Well, because they're necessarily different, because the appearing object is let's say you think of your mother's face. That's your referent object. The appearing object is the mental image of your mother's face, which is not your mother's face. It's just a semblance of that.
But suppose, Venerable George, suppose we lived together and we shared food in a kitchen.
Oh, I would love that.
And I came to you one day and said, Venerable George, you ate my piece of pizza.
Yeah.
And then you turned to me and said, Stephen, you're crazy. We haven't ordered pizza for 3 weeks.
Right. Okay.
So in that case, I'm kind of imagining that piece of pizza that you ate, feeling maybe a little bit offended even.
Right.
I'm surprised because you would never do that.
Right.
And is that a case of maybe just creating, I've got a mental image of a piece of pizza, but as mine, it never existed even. I was
right. So
wrong.
Remember when we talked about imputing phenomena, there are two kinds of imputations. Imputations that are conventionally existent and imputations that are just completely wrong. Like, say, the horns of a rabbit and so forth, or because of some mental thinking or memory lapse, or seeing a pizza box in the corner, thinking that piece of pizza that George ate that never existed, that was never that last piece of pizza that George ate. That's also a kind of imputation that's just wrong, like the horns of a rabbit or the sons of a barren woman. Okay, good thinking. Shnehi, what do you think?
Venerable George, I've never really thought about this idea of intrinsically existent mind as much as I have about the I. So I am trying to figure out, the intrinsically existent mind, like you said, it's not about the object. It's about my subjective experience of it being an intrinsically existent mind. So
you don't even have to use the word intrinsically existent here. Just think of mine. So when we talk about mine, there is a conventionally existent mine, just like there is a conventionally existent I, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which we sometimes say the mere I, and we say the mere mind or the conventionally existent mind. The conventionally existent mind, again, is not talking about the iPad, and when we're talking about my iPad or my pizza or whatever, It's not talking about that outer object. It's the subjective response to perceiving something, having recognized myself as an intrinsically existing I, and then thinking, well, that's mine. That's mine. That's my iPad. That's my pizza. And it's that mind that's thinking that belongs to me, that's mine. That's the focal object.
So would it
And
be
it's
correct
you're
to
not focusing on the inherently existent mind. You're focusing on the conventionally existent mind, the mere mind, which is superimposed with its appearance as being inherently existent, and you're going along with that. And so you're grasping into it or apprehending it as an inherently existent mind, or that it is belongs to me.
So if it's not about the object, but more about my response to the object,
Exactly.
is my recognition of it, that feeling of possessiveness, like you said, there are many iPads in the store, but once I pay for it, there is a different response.
Right. If the clerk were to drop the one you just bought on the floor,
Right.
you just dropped my iPad. Once you've recognized it as belonging to you, right? There's a different response to that.
So that's what I'm watching for. That's what I'm looking for in
Right.
myself.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So good thinking. So continuing. Jimpa says, as for its apprehending aspect, it grasps at mine, quote unquote, as existing through intrinsic characteristics on the basis of thinking mine as its focus, which again, difficult to understand. And Klein translates on page 181, the subjective aspect is upon observing the object of observation. So that means the referent referring to, it doesn't mean observing that you actually perceive the mind when you say observing it, that when referring to the object of reference, which is the mind, to conceive the mind to be established by way of its own character, which is just another way of saying to be inherently existent. Okay, so Jimpa's text continues. How are we doing? We okay? Okay. Question.
We're about halfway through. Do you want to take your break?
Yeah, let's just take a short break for a second. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'll keep my microphone on. I'm happy to listen to any of your discussions while I stretch my legs. Ugh.
Mary Ellen, you can pause the recording.
Mary.
So those of you who have gone out for a cup of tea or whatever, make your way back slowly. We'll start up. So just while people are coming back, also if you're practicing deity yoga, generating yourself as Avalokiteshvara or Tara or Yamataka, Vajrayogini, whatever, Haruka, at a certain point when you're trying to develop divine pride, you're thinking that you are, let's say, Vajrayogini, and your body is yours, right? Mine. This is my body. It's not, so that's an example also when you're practicing Tantra to think about these two aspects of I and mine. They're related to divine pride, the divine pride of being Vajrayogini, that's I, and this is my body, this is my mandala, and so forth. That's an example of mine. So you would understand all of them as empty of inherent existence. Okay, so let's get back here. So there's it's phrased as a question here in Jimpa's translation. Let's see, in Anne Klein's on page 181, she has it objection. In Chandrakirti's own commentary on This Is Mine, which is the last line of stanza 3. So that's what we're talking about. So question or objection. If this is so, if what is so, that you're referring to your focal object is the mere I and the mere mind and so forth. If this is so, how is it that in the commentary, that means in Chandrakirti's auto commentary, in the part pertaining to the line, then with the thought mine, and you see he has in parentheses there in Jimpa's book 1.3b. So that means the first verse of the Madhyamakavatara that we studied many, many months ago, right? So he has a footnote there, 345. 345 says, from Tsongkhapa's own commentary on this line, see page 47. So if you go back in Jimpa's book to page 47 of the written text, you can see his commentary on that line. As Anne actually quotes the whole verse. Here he's, yes, I'm sorry, that was chapter 1, verse 3, not the first verse. Chapter 1, verse 3. So she has stanza 3. Homage to that compassion for migrators who are powerless like a bucket traveling in a well, through initially adhering to a self, an I, and then generating for things, attachment for things. This is mine. Okay, you remember that verse from the beginning of the text when we talked about the bucket going up? So in India, some kind of water wheel, the bucket goes down, gets filled with water, and you have to use effort to pull it up, and then it goes around a, what do you call it, a gear or something at the top, goes down again. That kind of device. Maybe there are other kinds of devices that Chandrakirti was imagining that are kind of like that. But it's in its progress down and up, the bucket hits the side of the walls. It's difficult to go up. It's easy to go down. Sort of like in samsara, it's easy to go down to the lower realms. It's difficult to go up again. We're buffeted all the time by different kinds of suffering. So that's what the example is like, powerless like a bucket traveling in a well, through initially adhering to a self, an I. In other words, initially you grasp to, when you're in the embryo, you think I. And then once you have sense organs and you have contact with other things, you develop the thought of mine, that's, or later when you're a baby, my milk, my mother, whatever. Okay, so that's the context. Jimpa just quotes that so that we have to go back and read at the beginning of the text. So, question, if this is so, how is it that in the commentary in the part pertaining to the line, then with the thought of mine, Chandrakirti writes, thinking this is mine, they manifestly cling to all things that are other than the object of grasping at I. And that's end of that quote. That's what in Chandrakirti's commentary. And thus, Chandrakirti states that clinging to this is mine on the basis of focusing on bases such as the eyes and so forth is a form of grasping at mine. Did you follow that, Anna? A little bit? Mm-hmm. Rocio, are you following? Okay. And Klein's a little bit clearer. She says, in Chandrakirti's own commentary, this is mine, which is the last line of that stanza we just read. He says in the commentary to that stanza, Chandrakirti says, thinking this is mine, one adheres to, or as Jimpa says, what does he say here? Manifestly clinging, right? Adhering means strongly clinging. One thinking this is mine, one adheres to all aspects of things other than the object of the conception of an inherently existent I. Then she has in brackets, given your explanation above that the object of observation of a false view of the transitory collection as inherently existent mind, you explained before that the object of observation, the referent is not the eyes, ears, and so forth, but the mind itself, then end bracket, so that's explanatory. Taking that into account, how can you take Chandrakirti's explanation that upon observing a base such as an eye, adherence to it, thinking this is mine, is a conception of inherently existent mind? So someone's got a doubt about what Chandrakirti has said here, that Lama Tsongkhapa is explaining about the referent object or the focus of the innate view of the transitory collection, grasping to mine. Okay. It seems like there's some contradiction to what he said at the beginning of the text. What's going on? So I'll read Jimpa again. Reply. The meaning here is this: on the basis of having perceived the eyes and so on as mine, on the basis of having perceived the eyes and so forth as mine, we tend to manifestly cling, adhere to a truly existent mine. It is not the case, however, that the eyes and so on, which are instances of mine, remember we were talking about the meaning of illustration, one of the meanings is instance. However, it is not the case, however, that the eyes and so on, which are instances of mine, are themselves the objects of focus. It is not the case that they are the referent object, that they are what you are referring to. What you're referring to is the mind, the subjective mind that's possessive about those. If it were the case that, you focused on that the eyes and so on were actually the objects of focus, this would bring the consequence that being an instance of an identity view and a grasping at the self-existence of phenomena would not be mutually exclusive. Whoa. So this goes back to my question you can raise also again about exchanging self and others. So if you have an instance, you point out something which was a view of the transitory collection and another mind which is grasping at the self-existence of phenomena, could they be the same thing? Could a instance of the view of the transitory collection be a grasping at the self-existence of phenomena?
Sure, it's a special case of that, right?
Oh, oh, good. In the
Because I'm wrong,
debate-
because that
in the
makes it
debate-
more
in the
juicy.
debate courtyard, when someone says something that you think they're not going to accept, you say, "Oh, good, okay." In that case, so the view of the transitory collection. When we talk about emptiness, we say there's two kinds of emptiness: emptiness of persons and emptiness of phenomena that are other than persons. Right? We say the emptiness of phenomena. So although the emptiness of phenomena does include, technically, the emptiness of persons, generally when you take the pair, emptiness of persons and emptiness of phenomena refers to phenomena other than persons. Okay, so here, if you talk about a view of an instance of the view of the transitory collection, that means grasping to I or mine as inherently existent. Could that be an example of the grasping to phenomena within the pair, persons and phenomena, other than persons? No, they're mutually exclusive. If you talk about the pair, emptiness of persons, or emptiness of persons and emptiness of phenomena, the two are mutually exclusive. Although in a technical sense, phenomena includes persons, when you talk about the pair, the two of them together in the same sentence and you're in that same context, you're talking about the emptiness of phenomena which are other than persons. Okay. Making sense? Does that more clear, John? Okay. So Anne translates it this way. Well, let me say her answer. This refers to adherence to the mind as truly established. Here they're throwing around existing by its own characteristic, truly established. All of them are theoretical synonyms, so they can use one, replace one by the other. This refers to adherence to the mind as truly established upon perceiving eyes and so forth as mine. It does not indicate that eyes and so forth, which are illustrations of the mind, or Jimpa says instances of the mind, it does not indicate that eyes and so forth, which are illustrations of the mind, are the objects of observation. For if that were not the case, again, double negatives. If that were not the case, the view of the transitory collection and the conception of a self of phenomena would not be mutually exclusive, and then she has in brackets, whereas they are. So the conception of the view of the transitory collection and the conception of a self of phenomena are mutually exclusive. That means if it's one, it's definitely not the other. If it's a view of the transitory collection, it's not a conception of the inherent existence of phenomena and so forth. Making sense? Don, what do you think?
Well, my memory of the view of the transitory collection is that by first observing the aggregates, we see them as inherent existent, then we say I and mine. So there's some
doubt. Okay, so what you're remembering is maybe the lower school's view. For the lower schools, when you talk about the view of the transitory collection, you observe the aggregates and you conceive of them as being a truly existent person. That is your object of observation for the lower tenets. But in the Prasangika, that's not the case. You're not taking the aggregates as your object as your object of observation. You're talking about the response to recognize, you observe, you've apprehended the aggregates, with your mind, and you recognize that the I is designated to or imputed upon them. All of the schools say that the I is imputedly existent phenomena imputed upon the five aggregates, right? Either one or more of the five aggregates. How could you impute the I on one aggregate? Don? Could you? Come on, keep yourself unmuted here.
I don't think so.
Disappearing into the mute space there. Keep yourself unmuted. There you go.
I don't think you can impute it on one aggregate.
Okay, so if I walk into the Vajrapani Gomba and I see I see your form aggregate sitting on a cushion, can't I impute that as Don?
Yes, conventional Don.
That's just one aggregate, one of the five aggregates, the form aggregate, right? Okay, so again, that's something to think about. So here in the Prasangika, when you're talking about mine, first you think iPad, this is mine, but then that subjective mind of possessiveness, thinking this is mine, that is the object of focus. It's not the iPad itself that's the object of focus or the referent object of the view of the transitory collection, grasping to mind. It's just that subjective aspect, thinking mine, sort of similar to the aggregates, okay? In the lower tenets, you say the aggregates are your object of observation, grasping to I. But for the Prasangika, they say, no, it's the mere I that's imputed upon the aggregates. Once you've got that mere I, that's your object of focus, that's your referent object, and the subjective aspect is you believe, you grasp at it as inherently existent. What do you think? Worthy of thought. So this week, after the recording has come out and Diana has had a chance to watch it, you give her a call up in Minnesota and say, I want to debate with you about this. Okay. Anyway, so are we okay? Okay, Karen's nodding this time. Okay, good. Ron, you okay? Okay, good. Okay. So let's continue in Jimpa's translation. As for the focal object, the referent, of the innate grasping at the self-existence of phenomena. So what's the focal object there? What's the referent? When I see the trees or the iPad itself, not thinking of it as mine, the focal object of the innate grasping at the self-existence of phenomena. So this is important because everything we see, we hear, we smell, we taste, we touch, we think about, appears to our mind as being inherently existent. So as for the referent object of the innate grasping at self-existence of phenomena, this includes grasping at the aggregates of form and so forth. So the form aggregate, the feeling aggregate, the discrimination aggregate, compositional factors aggregate, and the primary consciousness aggregate. This includes grasping at the aggregates of form and so on. That's the referent object. so on. In other words, at the eyes, ears, and so on of both self and others. That includes that, as well as the external environment that is not part of our inner world, that's not conjoined with our consciousness or not conjoined with the consciousness of other sentient beings, the trees, the rocks, the buildings, and so forth. As for the aspect apprehended by this grasping at the self-existence of phenomena, remember that means how does the mind react to that appearance of phenomena as being inherently existent? As for the aspect apprehended by this grasping at the self-existence of phenomena, it is the same as explained above, and then he has in brackets, in the context of grasping at the self-existence of persons. And his note 347 says, Tsong Khapa is saying that when it comes to the aspect of apprehension, how the mind is reacting to either the inherently existent I or inherently existent phenomena, the aspect is the same. There's no difference between grasping at the self-existence of persons and the self-existence of phenomena. They both have intrinsic existence as their grasped object, their object of grasping. The only difference between the two forms of grasping is their basic object. One takes persons as its focal object, as its referent, while the other takes phenomena other than persons as its referent. You following? Okay, I'm going to ask a question here. I'm not sure. I think I better ask Paul. So, Paul, in the tenets other than Prasangika, so that means the Svatantrika Majjhamaka, the Chittamatra below that, the Sautrantikas following reasoning and scripture, the Vaibhashikas following reasoning and scripture, all of the different tenets below that. Well, let's say, leave off the Hinayana tenets for the time being. So the Mahayana tenets, the Svatantrikas, Yogacara, and Sautrantika, Svatantrika, the Chittamatras, or Chittamatrins, however you want to say it. Is there a difference in the what is being grasped at in the grasping at self-existence of persons and at the self-existence of phenomena?
Yes. I think it's the short answer.
Yeah. Well, here I'm sort of broadening it a little. Here is just talking about self-existence. So the Chittamatra and the Svatantrikas, all of the various variations, say that there is a selflessness of persons and there is a selflessness of phenomena.
Correct.
Both say that.
Yes.
But they say what is being refuted with respect to persons is a self-supporting, substantially existent person. That's the selflessness of persons. Whereas for phenomena, Chittamatras and the various Tantrikas have different views, like say
not established by way of their own character as a referent of a conceptual consciousness, or
not existing as an object different from the consciousness that's perceiving it for the Chittamatras and so forth. So they say that what's being refuted in those two cases are different. Whereas for Prasangika, the referent object, the object that's being refuted in the selflessness of persons, in the selflessness of phenomena, what you're refuting is the same, inherent existence.
Correct. Yes.
So here, this a little bit is related to that. Here it says, now, it is these forms of grasping at self-existence of persons and phenomena that constitute the ignorance binding us to the cycle of existence. Oh, wait, I just skipped a sentence. So as for the aspect, go back a sentence before that. As for the aspect apprehended by this grasping at the self-existence of phenomena, it is the same as was explained above in the context of grasping at the self-existence of persons. The aspect apprehended by this grasping, what you're grasping at is inherent existence of phenomena. And what you're grasping at in terms of the I and mine is the inherent existence of the I and mine. Okay. So then that sentence that I just read. Now, it is these forms of grasping at self-existence of persons and phenomena that constitute the ignorance binding us to the cycle of existence, binding us to samsara. That's the basis of grasping to samsara. These two kinds of grasping, self-existence of persons and the self-existence of phenomena. So then he quotes a stanza from the 70 stanzas on emptiness. Tongni Dunchumba or something like that. So the way Jimpa translates this, things arisen from causes and conditions, that which conceives these to be real, the Buddha taught to be ignorance. From this emerged the 12 links. So he transposes, in other places, he transposes things so they sound more easily understandable. Here, Anne translates that, I think, a little more clearly. That which conceives things produced from causes and conditions to be real. That means to be inherently existent. What conceives phenomena that are produced from causes and conditions to be inherently existent? It's that basic ignorance, grasping to phenomena as inherently existent. So here it's just talking about impermanent phenomena, right? Things that are produced from causes and conditions. That which conceives things to be produced from causes and conditions to be real was said by the teacher to be ignorance. From it, the 12 links arise. So what that means is that what's the first link of the 12 links? Do you know, Amy?
Ignorance.
There you go. Okay. From it, so that which conceives things to be produced from causes and effects to be real, that means to be inherently existent, truly existent. Sorry. Was said by the teacher, was said by the Buddha, the founder, to be ignorance. From that ignorance, that's the first of the 12 links. From it, the 12 links arise. Okay, that's the verse. So if you're interested in knowing about the 70 stanzas, there's a translation by David Comito. Does anyone know David? That studied at, from what is it called? The center in New Mexico. He teaches there sometimes, right? Yeah. So David, I met many years ago when I was teaching at Tupten Link. So yeah, he translated this text along with a commentary to it. So that's a very good book to add. Do you have that in your library, Stephen? I know you have a vast library. I'm sure Paul has in his omniverse of books. So that's useful. Also, the commentary to the verses, so you get a little bit of understanding of them. There, he translated this verse this way: the teacher, Buddha, in other words, it's explaining what's meant by the teacher. When we recite these various epithets of the Buddha, we say Tomba, Chomdende, Dejin Shakba, Da Chomba. Tomba means the teacher or the founder. Okay. The teacher, Buddha, said that the conception of true existence of functional things, that means things that arise from causes and conditions, which arise from causes and conditions, is ignorance. The conception of the true existence of them is ignorance. From this ignorance arise the 12 dependent limbs. Okay, so Lama Tsongkhapa is quoting that verse, and then Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary says in Jinpa's translation, thus taking the things and phenomena as one's objects and grasping at them as existing with final reality is said to be the ignorance that is the root of cyclic existence. Or Anne says on page 181, the conception that a thing that is a phenomena, Jinpa breaks it up into two things, things and phenomena. Things can mean impermanent things. I'm not sure if he's understanding it that way, but Anne translates it, the conception that a thing that is a phenomenon other than persons is established as its own reality is said to be the ignorance that is the root of cyclic existence. So that's generally Nagarjuna's view. So the 70 stanzas was composed by Nagarjuna, right? Chandrakirti, however, says the root of cyclic existence is the view of the transitory collection. We've mentioned that many times before. It will come up again later in more detail. Okay. So the text continues, and such grasping at the self-existence of phenomena brings ignorance grasping at the self-existence of persons. It is taught that the 12 links of dependent origination come into being from such grasping. So Lama Tsongkhapa is pointing out a sort of sequential, you grasp at the self-existence, the true existence, the inherent existence of the aggregates, let's say, or phenomena in general. As a result of that, that brings about ignorance grasping at the self-existence, the inherent existence of persons. So it's sort of like a causal, first you have conception of the true existence of phenomena, and then you have as a result of that, grasping of the true existence of persons. Whereas when we meditate, in order to realize emptiness, usually we meditate on the person first, the emptiness of the person, and then later we extend that to the emptiness of phenomena. You following? Okay. So here, Anne says, the conception that a thing that is a phenomenon other than a person is established as its own reality is said to be the ignorance that is the root of cyclic existence. Since the ignorance that is the conception of a self of persons arises from the conception of a self of phenomena, the 12 links of dependent arising are described as arising from it. I remember asking Geshe Zopa, unless my memory is wrong, how does that work? That you first have grasping at the true existence of phenomena, and then have as a result of that, have grasping of the self of persons. What do you think, Richard? Does that sound like a causal sequence?
It does to me, because a person is a phenomenon, and so in one sense, a person is a subset of phenomenon. So it follows.
Right, but that wouldn't be like a causal relation. That would be a natural relation, that it is a subset of phenomena. But here, when we talk about phenomena, remember, when you talk about emptiness of persons and phenomena, they're mutually exclusive. So when you're talking about phenomena, the self of phenomena, self-existence of phenomena, or in the other case, the emptiness of phenomena, that's different than the persons. They're mutually exclusive. So
Is that a function of context? Because
Yeah,
clearly a person, yeah, it's got to be a function of context because clearly a person is a phenomenon.
exactly. We said that before, but in certain contexts, let's say when we say what are the other ones? Salam. Have you heard of the text called Salam? Grounds and paths. Sa is like bhumi. Lam means marga, paths. So we talk about the 10 bhumis and the 5 paths, right?
Mhm.
4 paths? How many paths are there? 5 paths, right? What are the 5 paths, Ida?
Accumulation, preparation, seeing, meditation. I forgot the other ones.
That's what I'm saying. 4 or 5? What's the fifth?
There's 5.
No more learning.
No more learning.
That's Buddhahood, or in the Hinayana, that's nirvana. So that's like graduation. The learning paths are the first 4, and then the no more learning is you got your PhD, like John and Paul and whoever else. Who else has a PhD here? So there must be someone. Richard, do you have a PhD? Snehi has a PhD. Good. Snehi, what's your PhD in?
Agricultural economics.
Cool. Karen, you have a PhD also? What's yours in?
It's an organizational development and workforce development.
Okay. I don't know how much that maps to Buddhism. It probably does a certain amount. So,
It does.
so I asked Geshe-Zopa, how does that work? So say, for instance, when you're first thinking about yourself, you know yourself by knowing your own aggregates, right? Your form, your feelings. This is your kind of your orientation of yourself. You conceive of those to be inherently existent. And then on the basis of that, the thought I arises. Oh, this is me, this is me. I. Okay, anyway, it can be more subtle than that. So it's worth thinking about that. So Jimpa had said, and since such grasping of the self-existence of phenomena brings about ignorance, grasping at the self of persons, it is taught that the 12 links of dependent origination come into being from such grasping. So then he continues, for this ignorance to cease, in order for this ignorance to cease, one must see how nothing exists in the way such ignorance apprehends it, and how the self-existence is conceived, and how the self-existence it conceives has no bearing on reality. Excuse me. I think, again, he's changing wording a little bit there. He likes to make it in his own way, and translates it more literally. In order to overcome this ignorance, grasping to the true existence of phenomena in persons, it must be seen that phenomena are empty of how they are conceived by the conception of inherent existence. Phenomena, my iPad, my mug, the trees, and so forth. How they are conceived to exist is it's grasping, apprehending them to be truly existent, inherently existent. It must be seen that the self, that is inherent existence, conceived in this way, does not exist. So it's not enough simply to have a mind, sitting in meditation with no thoughts and not conceiving of phenomena to be truly existent, just because, like a goat chewing its cud, or maybe that's only cows chew their cud. Do goats chew their cud also? Okay. Inquiring minds want to know. Anyway, doesn't matter. So just like a cow not thinking of anything, not having anything in mind. It's not enough just to take your mind away from these things. You have to actually refute them with reason, with logic. So the 70 stanzas of emptiness states, another verse from the 70 stanzas, and this is, if you're looking in David Comito's, this is verse 65 on page 176 in David's book with a commentary. So the 70 stanzas, according to Jimpa's translation, when one realizes things are empty, empty of inherent existence, one sees the truth and is confused no more. Wow. Ignorance comes to cease. From this, the 12 links cease. So if you realize things are empty, that doesn't mean the first time you have a direct realization of emptiness that the 12 links cease. You have to eliminate all the forms up through the seventh bhumi, right? All the forms of grasping the true existence. Anyway, that's generally what it says. And translates that, if through seeing reality one knows well that things are empty, ignorance does not arise. That is the cessation of ignorance, whereby the 12 links cease. Okay, so that's one citation to verify the fact that it's not enough to just take your mind away from phenomena, just to sit with an empty mind, like some people think of, some misunderstanding of Dzogchen or Mahamudra or mindless meditation, that's meditating on emptiness. That won't get rid of the grasping. You have to realize things are empty. So then there's another verse from the Dharmadhatu Stotra, the praise of the Dharmadhatu, that Jimpa translates as the praise to the ultimate expanse. He translates, grasping at self and mine, long does one conceptualize the external. I'm not sure where he's getting this. When one sees the two selflessnesses, the seeds of cyclic existence cease. Or Anne translates that, through the conception of I and mine, Jimpa said self and mine, through the conception of self and mine, all external phenomena whatsoever are imputed to inherently exist. She has in brackets. When the two aspects of selflessness are seen, the seeds of cyclic existence are ceased. And there's another, so that was verse, what did I say? I think verse 65, right? So then there's another verse here, which is verse, what is it here? Anne said that's verse 64. Komita said that's verse 65. The other verse is verse 26, which Jimpa translates as that, again, from the Dharmadhatu Stotra, the praise to the Dharmadhatu. That verse, the last two lines, that which supremely purifies the mind is the teaching of no intrinsic existence. Or as Anne translates that other two lines of the other verse, the supreme doctrine purifying the mind, that's what you really want, right? Is the absence of inherent existence. That's what purifies the mind. So the context of that, there is a translation of the Dharmadhatu Stotra by, how do you pronounce his name, Paul? Brunholz? Do I hear that right?
Yeah, Karl Brunholzl. I think there's several translations, but yeah, his is the most recent.
Brunholzl, okay. I didn't see that there. Okay. So in there, he has that verse 26, and the first two lines of it are this. Oh, no, sorry. He has the first two lines of that are impermanence, suffering, and empty. These three purify the mind. And then the two lines that are quoted here, the last two lines of that verse 26, the Dharma purifying the mind best is the lack of any nature. Okay, so, realizing impermanence, suffering, and empty, like the Four Noble Truths. What does he say? These three purify the mind. Okay. But what purifies the mind best is the realization of emptiness, that there's no true existence, no inherent existence. Making sense?
Yeah.
Okay. John, what do you think?
I was gonna suggest that maybe Thupten Jinpa's got a typo. Could maybe that second line be so long as, or how long does one? Because
Yeah, right. So I'm not sure where you get that.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Because
so it says, long does one, it sounds like some poetry, right?
yeah,
Some-
it's
some-
can't quite be right, but
So let's see what the Tibetan says here.
it's GC Paro Namtak.
It says, Dakdang Dagi Shezin. So grasping to self and to I and mine. Jise, GC, Chiro Nam Takpa. So Anne translates that through the conception of I and mind, all the whatever imputed to it, when the two aspects are seen there. So she doesn't translate the GC. The GC means as long as, yeah. So Jimba's taking it kind of poetically. Long does one conceptualize the external. You could say as long as there is grasping at the self and at the I and mind, there is conception of the external world to be inherently existent. That's more or less what it means. Okay. So then one last quotation from the 400 stanzas by Arya Deva. So this is Arya Deva's root text. And this is a very famous verse that I've mentioned before, and it will be quoted many times. This is verse number 20. What is it? Chapter 14, verse 25. Although there are 400 stanzas, they're divided into different chapters. So this is, I don't know what number it is if you just count from the beginning, but in chapter 14, it's verse 25, the last two lines of that. It says, when one sees no self in the objects, the seed of cyclic existence will cease. Or as Anne translates it, when selflessness is seen in objects, the seeds of cyclic existence are ceased. So sometimes in commentary to this, and maybe in another verse in the 400 stanzas, it says, even if you have a doubt that phenomena are empty of inherent existence, that sort of creates the cause for the eventual cessation of your cyclic existence. That's another verse in the 400 stanzas. But here is saying, when selflessness is seen in objects, the seeds of cyclic existence are ceased. Right? I'm sure why my iPad is not charging there. My iPad is not charging. Okay. So then also, that was chapter 14, verse 25. Then in chapter 10 of the 400 stanzas, in chapter 6 of the 400 stanzas, verses 10 and 11, it says, therefore all afflictions, well, I'll read Jimpa's first. When Yeah. Therefore, all afflictions will be destroyed as well through the destruction of delusion. This is timug or moha, which is generally understood to be, of the three root delusions, ignorance, attachment, and hatred. It's the one called ignorance. It actually is called moha. Therefore, all afflictions will be destroyed as well through the destruction of delusion. When this truth of dependent origination is seen, delusion will emerge no more. Therefore, with all your effort, engage in this discourse alone. Or as Anne translates, therefore, all afflictions are destroyed by destroying obscuration. Again, she, instead of saying delusion, she says obscuration. Generally, you can say, what do you like, Paul, for moha, for timug?
Yeah, like delusion. Yeah, preferably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What does he said? Delusion. Yeah. John, moha.
I'm sticking with delusion.
Yeah, it's darkness, kind of like something that prevents you from seeing. So it's another synonym of marikpa, or ignorance. It's kind of from the point of view that the state of mind that prevents you from seeing reality as it actually is. Therefore, with all your effort, engage in the discourse alone. So Anne translates that, therefore, all afflictions are destroyed by destroying obscuration. When dependent arising is seen, obscuration, this basic ignorance, does not arise. Therefore, with all endeavor, here, just discourse on this should be proclaimed. Chimpa translated as, therefore, with all your engage in this discourse alone. She says only this should be proclaimed. Okay, so that's the point. So the point here is to recognize that it's important to actually realize emptiness. So I'm going to, okay, I guess I'm not going to be, I thought I'd be able to finish this today. So we'll have one more session before we begin the next chapter, which is the actual reasoning on emptiness. But let's just read a little bit more before we end class. So Jimpa's text continues, since the context in this passage is that of identifying delusion, moha, or we say in Tibetan, we say timug, when we talk about the three poisons, identifying delusion from among the three poisons. So, when we talk about the three poisonous minds, you can talk about the 6 root delusions, you could talk about the 84,000 delusions. You keep on condensing down, you can come down to the 3 poisonous minds, and then you could even condense that further into what? Paul? Oh, Mikhail, what can you condense it? Yeah, everything comes from ignorance. A little more expanded, you could say the 3 poisonous minds, one of which is the name moha for ignorance, attachment, and hatred, not anger. And then you could talk about 6 root delusions, further. Since the context in this passage is that of identifying delusion from among the 3 poisons, the delusion referred to here is afflicted ignorance. Afflicted ignorance. So it is an ignorance, or as Anne translates, since the obscuration mentioned in that stanza, or that delusion mentioned in the stanza, is on the occasion of identifying the obscuration or delusion that is one of the 3 poisons, desire, hatred, and obscuration, it is afflictive ignorance. Is there a non-afflictive ignorance? When it says afflictive ignorance. Stephen's nodding. What is non-afflictive ignorance?
Well, that would be Venerable George, when you just don't know something. You were telling me about the distant galaxies, that are far, far away that I don't know anything about. So
I don't know anything about them either. Okay. Non-afflictive ignorance. Okay. Maybe there's something more detailed when we talk about the Buddha and everything. But anyway, that's good. Also, and then Jimba continues, and for that ignorance to cease, that timu, that moha, that afflicted ignorance, that's the root of cyclic existence. In order for it to cease, it is said that one needs to realize, one must realize the profound truth of dependent origination, whereby the meaning of emptiness arises in terms of dependent origination. So that a little bit difficult to understand what that means. Anne's translation, I think, is a little bit clearer. Also, it is stated, Anne says on end of page 182 and beginning of 183, also it is stated that in order to overcome this ignorance, this afflictive ignorance, one must realize the meaning of profound dependent arising, in which emptiness appears as the meaning of dependent arising. Those statements are incredibly profound. It's just stated here matter-of-factly, and we're just going to go over it just also matter-of-factly right now. But how the relationship between realizing the meaning of profound dependent arising, how that's related to emptiness is a subtle thing. The king of reasonings to prove emptiness is said to be the reasoning of dependent arising. On the basis of that, you can realize emptiness. They're not synonymous. Dependent arising doesn't mean emptiness, but it said it is, what does it say here? Also, it is stated that in order to overcome this ignorance, one must realize the meaning of profound dependent arising, in which emptiness appears as the meaning of dependent arising. So they're not synonymous, but they're related in some way like that. Okay, so then just one more sentence here. The commentary's author, that means Chandrakirti, because he wrote the auto commentary to his Karikas. The commentary's author too writes, quote, yogis engage in the negation of selfhood. Actually, this is not the commentary. This is one of the Karikas, verse, as he says there, Jimpa says 6:120. I'm not sure why he's saying the commentary's author. Anne says, furthermore, the commentator, Chandrakirti, says in verse 120d, the yogi refutes self. Or Jimpa says, yogis engage in the negation of selfhood and states how it is necessary to realize selflessness through eradicating the object of self-grasping. So we'll go into that next time. If you want to go ahead in the book, you can look up in the many, many pages in advance to verse 6:120. And at that point, it's mainly talking about the view of the transitory collection and different subjects like this. It's many, many lessons from now in the future, but in your book, you can look and you can see this verse there, and you can see Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary there, also referring to these verses that we just read from the 400 stanzas and the praise to the Dharmadhatu. Okay, so that's where we're going to end. So that is, what page is that in Jimpa's book?
188.
188, and in Anne's, that's 183. So that's where we're going to start next time. The commentary's author too writes yogis engage in the negation of self. Paul, what do you think?
I just wanted to, when you said non-afflictive ignorance, I remembered that I had just come across this phrase a few days ago, and it took me a few moments to find it. It's non-afflictive ignorance is described as what is possessed by a pratyeka Buddha that differentiates them from a fully awakened Buddha, at least in the Abhidharma Kosha. And so Vasubandhu in the Abhidharma Kosha says, although it is asserted that although Pratyeka Buddhas and Shravaka Arhats have destroyed all darkness, moha, all delusion, because of being free of afflictive delusions, klishta sammoha, they have not done so in every respect. For just so they still have non-afflictive ignorance, aklishta ajnanam, with regard to the qualities of a Buddha, objects distant in space and time, and the limitless varieties of things.
Right, that's what I was referring to. Thank you for So there is so we can talk about that a little bit next time also. How are we doing? Anyone have a final question before we finish up? Richard might. He's got his, no? Okay. Minto, okay. You've got to come on screen if you ask a question. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, not for you. Sorry, that was my housemate. Yeah, I have a quick question. So I guess I read somewhere that, you know, basically one has to master mindfulness if one basically wants to escape samsara, right? So how do we practice
Say that again. One has to master mindfulness.
Yeah, one has to master mindfulness.
Okay.
In order to escape samsara.
Yeah, you're thinking particularly from your familiarity with the Theravada teachings, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think that,
and so forth. Yeah, it says that
yeah.
Satipatthana is the all in everything, right? Okay.
Yes,
okay.
yeah.
So
I guess in this case, how do we practice mindfulness with this view?
Oh yeah, to be mindful of the view. Yeah. So as Nadine mentioned, the view of the how many mindfulnesses were there, Nadine? The view of the 4 mindfulnesses?
Yes, 4.
Nadine?
I don't know.
Oh, you quoted this text. Maybe I'm saying the wrong thing. The song of the 4 mindfulnesses.
Oh, yeah.
What were those 4?
Mindfulness of the teacher, mindfulness of suffering sentient being, mindfulness of oneself as a deity, and mindfulness of emptiness.
Emptiness. Okay, so that's considered to be one of the objects of mindfulness. Mindfulness of the sentient beings is generally important at the beginning rather than mindfulness on the breathing and walking and eating and so forth. In the Mahayana, it's considered to be more important. So that comes in there, that you would try to be mindful of emptiness throughout the day. Okay, keep that for some period of time in your practice. When you're practicing Tantra, you're being mindful of yourself as being the deity and the surroundings as being the mandala and so forth. Okay. So good questions, tough material, but a little bit more understandable than when we were talking about Svatantrika views in some ways, I found. But a lot to sort of grist for your Dharma mill here. So think about these things. Also, Nadine, you think about in exchanging self and others, does the conception of I easily or spontaneously arise upon yourself as being that person? Anyway, we'll leave that to discussion group on Monday. the host, I forgot who the host is. Mary Ellen, would you like to put up the final prayers? Kewadi Nyududa Lama Sangye Drubgyurne Droa Chikyang Malupa De Sala Kuparsho Changchup Semcho Rimboche Make Panam Kegyurche Kewa Nyampa Me Payang Gone Gong Tu Pelbarsho. And then the prayers for the quick return of Lama Zopa, peerless teacher and assembly of the Bodhisattvas, Shravakas, Pratika Buddhas, victorious Losang father and sons, together with your lineage, all objects of refuge of the infinite realms, please now bestow the virtue and goodness to accomplish this prayer. In holding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings through explanation and practice, you wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparable, venerable Guru, to you I make this request. And I've mentioned before, but just to remind you, the three words that are in parentheses there, Tub, Ten, Sopa, those are often in these kinds of prayers, the names of the Lama, what is referring to are sort of syllables of it are come into the prose of the prayer like that. Sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, while you strove exclusively both for the welfare of the victorious one's teachings and for mother living sentient beings, you suddenly departed to peace. At this I lost hope, I was bereft. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth of the oceanic blessings of the three jewels and the great waves of mind generation, that's a synonym of bodhicitta, of the children of the victorious ones, may the smile of a new reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for us fortunate disciples. And then for all of our spiritual teachers, you who are my eyes for viewing all the infinite scriptures, you are the supreme gateway for us fortunate ones traveling to liberation, engaging as you do with skillful means, moved by mercy, all illuminating spiritual friends, please live long and stable lives. And then sealing that conventional dedications, those conventional dedications in the emptiness of the three spheres, the virtues created are not inherently existent, although they appear to our mind, we can conceive of them. They do have results, but they do not exist in the way that they appear to our mind as findable. The objects, goals dedicated to Buddhahood, development of the various realizations, even the quick return of our gurus and so forth, all of them appear to our mind conceptualizing as though they inherently exist, but they are empty of that. And the act of dedication, trying to link these virtues with those goals, can't be found anywhere. It's just a name imputed to this process. All three are empty of inherent existence. Okay, thank you very much for stimulating class. I'll see some of you, maybe most of you, on Monday, maybe. Wishful thinking on my part. Anyway, we'll see you next Saturday here. Take care. Have a good week.
Thank you, Venerable George.
Thank you, Venerable George.
Thank you,
Feel
Venerable
better
George.
soon.
Venerable George.
Next
Thanks,
class,
Mary Ellen.
next class will also be Losar, is that right?
Yes.
Yes, that will be Tibetan New Year, very auspicious day. So to start the new year with illumination class, don't miss it. Make sure that Shanka gets over his migraine by then. Take care. See you.
Goodbye, Doris. Goodbye, Mary Ellen. Goodbye,
Take
all.
care, everyone. See you Monday or wherever.
Bye.